I am so pleased today that we're joined by Gina Koutsika, who's Director of Audiences and Content at the Ashmolean Museum of Art and Archaeology. Wanted to let all know that I met Gina back in around 2019, I think, when she was creative director at what was then the Museum of Childhood, now the Young V&A. And at that time, Gina was leading the kind of transformation of the museum from a social history museum, which was about childhood, to this brilliant thing that it is now, the world's leading museum of design and creativity for the young. And I remember really being captivated in early conversation with Gina about the plans they had to involve children and young people in the design and the development of the new museum, including a creative studio on the upper floor that she walked me around, where kids could come and kind of share their ideas and get involved in developing and designing the future museum. They really wanted to put power in the hands of children and young people to really, really shape the museum beyond just asking them what they wanted to see. And that was really evident. And the ways that Gina spoke about the museum's purpose being about building creative confidence, and the way that that was playing out in the development of the new museum made me just feel that Gina really gets the power of participation, and is definitely a leading light for it. And those of you who've been to the museum itself will have seen that today it's a place that absolutely feels like it's been designed by children and kind of unlocks that sense of childlike curiosity and creativity in all of us. Now, since that time, Gina's gone on to even bigger and better things. She's had an absolutely stellar career in museums and heritage, including at Royal Botanic Gardens Kew and the Imperial War Museum. And she's going to speak lots about all of those experiences today. As I mentioned, I think she's now Director of Audiences and Content at the Ashmolean in Oxford. And membership, I think, Gina, sits within your remit there. So we've asked Gina to share some broader lessons, not just about membership, but about working in participatory ways across her career, which has obviously been very varied, and then to think about the implications of all of those lessons on building and developing a bit more of a participatory membership. And she's taken that brief and done some really excellent thinking on those lessons. I'm really excited for you to hear her thoughts and reflections. So yeah, over to you, Gina, whenever you're ready.
Brilliant. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. So it's wonderful to be here. And if I have the next slide, what I'm going to talk about is things primarily from Imperial War Museums, Victoria and Albert Museum, and the Ashmolean. But as all of us, all of our thinking is informed by all of our life and all of our experiences. And I just wanted to put a slide of the privilege that I had to have had diversity of experiences in multiple organizations, primarily national organizations in London, but also a few independent and 3 from Greece, where my accent is from. And if I can have the next slide, what I will do is I will share experiences on participation and then some thinking of how that might resonate with some of you in my work for membership. Participation is it's messy. And I'm delighted, Irene, that you said that I believe in it. I believe in it. Sometimes I think, oh, I don't learn anything. It's messy, it's difficult, it's rewarding, it's worth doing, but it isn't easy. And in my experience, it has never got easier. It's not something like, oh, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. No, the more you do it, the better you want to do it, the more complicated it becomes, but also the more rewarding. And it becomes. So I will start something, and I have to admit that I wish I could say that everything that I have ever done in my career has been very strategic and planned. Most of the times, things that I have done have been intuitive, and then I have found a theory, and I thought, oh, that's what I have been doing. Great management thinking, Gina. But most of the time, it comes from experience, passion, love, and listening to others. So in 2010, I got a job at the Imperial War Museums, and I was told that I had to create a partnership bottom up with 500 organizations across 5 countries, the main players in the First World War, to commemorate the First World War Centenary. At that time, 2010, the Jubilee hadn't happened, 2012, the Olympics hadn't happened, and nobody was interested in commemorating the start of the war. Even the idea was bizarre. So I started quite alone with some support from the Director General assistant, and started going around talking to people and listening what they wanted to do. We ended up by 2016, we had over 4,000 partner organizations, many more individual members from 62 countries around the world. And I was going around saying that anyone that is not crazy will join the partnership because there's only good things that can happen out of it. Possibly not very professional. And one of the things that was very important, as I said, I started being alone. Slowly, it became a community of practice that was very, very supportive. And we were asked to go around the country. But I had the absolute backing and belief of Diane Lee, which was the Director General of Imperial War Museum. And even though the team was very small and the ambition was huge, because we were listening, because we were experimenting, because we were very able to respond quickly and iterate, and I enable us to avoid the bureaucracy of a national museum, it became very responsive, and we got a lot of our members became our advocates. If I can have the next slide, and this. How could this then? I was thinking, what does that mean for a membership team or a membership organization? What lessons can be used? First of all, it is very important to have a senior champion. It cannot always be the director, but it has to be someone that sits in the table. So I know that I have seen 2 people from our team in the Ashmolean in the call. The membership team at the moment is trying to do something innovative and different to pilot it. It hasn't been easy sailing, but because I have been in the room and able to advocate at every single moment, they had a better chance of getting their ideas through. So for me, that is very, very important. Other thing that is important is to have very clear and common goals that all of you together believe in something. So bringing the members along, or not necessarily always bringing the members along, but listening to the members so that the common goals are developed with the membership, to be very transparent on what is able and what is not able. And this is something that we are not often very good at, because we try and we want to please everyone and be very polite all of the times. But there are some things that cannot happen for a variety of reasons. And I believe that being clear and transparent within all the stakeholders and the members is important. Then if you want to have an equitable relationship, to have it. Or if you cannot have it, not to say that you have one. So that if all in the Imperial War Museum partnership, all members were equal, regardless if you were the BBC or the government. In that partnership, not in the world. Or you were a tiny volunteer-run organization, you had the same rights than everybody else in the membership. And for me, that was very, very important. And then being able to take risks, small risk, informed risk, but try things and knowing that they might not always work. And again, that is very key. So if I can have the next slide, I'll go to the lesson. Second, is what Irene talked about the Young V&A. So we worked a lot with children, and they informed from the colors of the wall, they informed the design, they informed what we had in the museum. And young people, we place young people at the center of the decision making, and we involve them throughout, co-designing processes, testing things. However, I want to say because it was young people, not only because they were, some of them were very young children, it was incomplete and messy, and you didn't always have the scientific parameters when you want to do audience research. And a lot of the team often felt unfulfilled that we didn't have the time with the children to fully to immerse them in the project. And through that, it was very important that perfection is the enemy of good, and we had to keep going, but also being aware of what we could do and what we couldn't do. In the next slide, that I will say how that can be used in membership. If I can have the next slide. Yeah, Helena Rice, and I have permission to use this photograph from the Young V&A. She was one of the 3 people, myself and 2 others, that were not furloughed during the pandemic. And we decided to continue the participatory practices with young people online. Neither Helena nor I had never done this before. And actually, the museum didn't have experience with teenagers, which were the young people we were working with. So there were so many unknowns, but we were committed to continue working and not stop the process. And I think this is important. So for membership teams, the lessons is that we can imagine participation as requiring a complete organizational transformation with everything being in place before anything can happen. And I've never worked somewhere where everything was in place before something happened. I mean, I hope one day I will. It's very unlikely. So you have to be able and willing to get dirty, to get messy, to fail, to bruise yourself and stand up and continue. So and to succeed. They're not always a problem. Have some incremental wins, and also at the same time, have a long-term vision. So your small wins or your small things that are not perfect, but you want to try, always help you towards the long-term vision rather than going all over the place. And inviting members and in conversation early and testing yourself, because I think this is very important. And as with the photograph, things happen. Okay, the pandemic was big, but small things happen constantly. So one has to remain open and adaptable, and not to stop because something is not yet perfect, or not to stop because something is difficult. And I was very, very proud of the membership team and the digital producer team in the Ashmolean Museum, because relatively recently, I realized there was going to be another obstacle, and I gave them the option, and I said, well, if you want to stop now, I will back you up. And I say, we have tried, we cannot continue. To be told off, and I was so proud I was told off. And the membership manager said to me, we don't give up, Gina, when things get difficult. And I couldn't have heard something better. So if I go to another lesson, the next slide. Thank you. This is from a festival that the Ashmolean Museum has been doing for a long time. And it's a free annual weekend celebration that brings together Oxfordshire's diverse faiths and communities through performances, crafts, talks, music, and family activity. It has been shaped by a number of colleagues and communities since 2017, long before I joined the museum, and is currently under the leadership of Lucy Shipp, Kirsty Clark, and Ellie Remington in the public programs. Large collaborative projects require enormous clarity, as participation does not mean the absence of structures and boundaries. And this is something in the 4 years that I have been in the museum, and the festival is going from strength to strength, is something that we have learned together. And we need to agree that it's okay to argue in order at the end of it to have a meaningful collaboration that requires very clear communication, again, transparency about expectations, honesty about the limitations. You know, our communities are hosted in the museum and they can do a lot of the things that don't usually happen, but they cannot sit on our etching Greek sculptures, for example. And there are conservation limitations. This is an extreme example, but of what can happen and what cannot happen in the museum. And the shared understanding of each other's responsibility. And what I have seen, not only in the One World Festival, but in every partnership working that I have done, it's very important to put your red lines. And actually, I would go and say in every collaborative working, even with colleagues, some things are not negotiable. In the One World Festival is not only the safety of our collections, but it's the safety of our visitors, 10, 12, 15,000 people that attend the museum on that day. Their safety is not questionable. And ambiguity can damage the trust. At the same time, as museums, and I think that it is very difficult for most cultural organizations to recognize the real or perceived unequal distribution of resources and power between themselves, the Ashmolean, the University of Oxford, Imperial War Museum, V&A, and the community partners that sometimes are loose networks without the backing of an organization. And equity and fairness, for me, requires honesty and very active attention. So if I have the next slide, for membership, thank you. For membership, this lesson raises some difficult but important questions. Are we truly prepared as organizations to share power? Not only to say it, but actually to do it. Or are we simply inviting participation within tight control boundaries? And I think there is a gap between what we say we do and with what we actually do, because this gap is because we want to do what we say we do, but the reality sometimes stop us. And we talk about participation, belonging, and inclusion, but sometimes our structures, our behaviors, and our decision-making process do not always allow for that. So closing the gap requires a lot of self-awareness, and as an organization as well as individuals, and it also requires a willingness to become vulnerable and take risks. And participatory approaches require a lot of active listening, challenge certainty, and do not align with the traditional hierarchies that most of our institutions operate under. And they require a lot of internal goodwill and collaboration. And one of the lessons from the One World Festival for me that applies to membership is membership teams cannot work alone. No matter how small or big they are, they need to be very well connected and part of the ecosystem. And the KPIs or the targets for membership need to be shared across many different things. Thank you. If I go to lesson number 4. This is probably the hardest in my experience. And it's another example from the Ashmolean Museum. Because sometimes as organization, we cause unintentionally harm. So we had a community-led artist project, Nice Cup of Tea, before the pandemic or the early when the lockdowns happened. That when we evaluated it, it revealed serious failures in communication, relationship management, and institutional accountability. And the museum had really golden intentions. We had very good intentions, and there were many positive outcomes, but the community members and the artists involved ultimately felt undervalued, exploited, and excluded. And the breakdown in trust did not happen because people didn't care. And I will give you a specific example. I wasn't at the museum at the time, but my teams and the teams of the Ashmolean, we were talking about a temporary display, because in our language, a temporary display is a display that stays there for a specific amount of time, 2 months, 3 months, a year. The communities were hearing temporary display and they thought permanent display. And that never came up in the discussion. So they were not sinister misunderstandings, they were misunderstandings because of our different experiences. And we had underestimated the emotional labor communities contribute in addition to their expertise, the importance of ongoing communication and clarifying our words, the impact of internal decisions externally, because we would make a decision which would have been a very common or normal decision for an organization, but then for the communities, this was something big. And the consequence of insufficient investment and support. And I don't know about the experiences in the room, but in my experience, no matter how small or big the organization of work, we have always punched above our weight. We always want to do more than we can, which is wonderful, but it means that we are always, or very often, quite stretched. And when you work with communities, you have to give that time. So positive intentions do not erase negative impact, but we can always do something about it. And in the Ashmolean, my colleague Jane Cockcroft, head of interpretations, an extremely thoughtful person and caring leader, she acknowledged our failings. The director apologized the Director General of the Ashmolean apologized to the communities, asked for forgiveness, and together we started again creating something different, which is a new permanent display that everybody involved, and we involved young people from the communities and the elders, which are people my age, and I don't consider myself an elder, we're all very happy and proud to be. So if I can have the next slide. And for me, I said it's the hardest, and this is part of the project team working together. And for me, I said this is one of the hardest things that I have ever worked on, and I'm happy that we succeeded, but it wasn't guaranteed. That from lesson we can take from membership is accountability. Accountability is critical. If we want genuine relationship with members, we must also be prepared to acknowledge our mistakes openly. And that means listen when criticism arises, accept the responsibility, communicate honestly, and rebuild trust through our actions, not through what we say, but do things to rebuild the trust. And our members are extremely perceptive. They notice when an organization becomes defensive, and when they care about the PR message. They notice when our values feel performative, and they expect, and I think they deserve, transparency, accountability, which are, for me, the foundations of trust. So if I go on the last lesson, and this, if I have the next slide, please. And sorry, the one before, thank you. And this was again from the Museum of Childhood, which we were trying we were trying and succeeded in transforming it into the Young V&A. But at that time, we didn't know that we were going to succeed. We were just trying. So we talked, the whole ethos of the museum was participatory with young people and children and educators. And I had a brilliant team of about 100 people, but it's really very closely knit, working together. And there was one point that I felt that I was being very hypocritical to claim that we were making a museum based on participatory practices, and then me leading in a very traditional, old-fashioned, hierarchical leadership model that the V&A had. It wasn't I developed it, but I inherited it. And I talked to the teams, and we decided that we would like to explore alternative ways of leadership. And we were all very open to try to be more inclusive. Discussive practices were already common, posing open-ended questions, challenging each other, sharing our issues. And that slowly became the norm. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me because I was always thinking, am I being a good leader, or am I giving away my responsibilities? And again, it was the balance between that I was always accountable and I was always to be blamed if something went wrong. And it wasn't because, unfortunately, making decisions comes easy to me. You can ask my husband of 30 years. It's not something that I struggle with, but it was more giving the opportunity of everybody to be involved. And to do that, we created one team ethos. So regardless of which level you were, which team you were, a curator or learning or front of house or security or commercial, there was one ethos across the teams. We shared ownership. So everybody's successes and everybody's individual successes and individual failures became the museum successes and the museum failures. And it wasn't that everybody was doing everything, but everyone had a stake in each other's work. And that was very important. I was very open in what was going on, and I was very open when I couldn't say what was going on. So I couldn't reveal the name of the Young V&A. I knew it months before the team, but I never told them, oh, I don't know what the name is. I would say, we have decided the name. I'm not allowed to tell you. It's not going to happen. Like, so being open with your limitations and ask questions, inquire a lot. And in order for it, I've been reflecting a lot because I don't think this model of leading can work everywhere. And in order for it to work and to be effective, there has to be a culture of respect across the teams and the spirit of working together have towards the same goals and priorities, and deep respect, not rhetoric of respect. It also needs to have a team that is innately collaborative or has learned to put the museum before themselves. So it can't work with a team where people want to write articles and go on presentation. That team always put the Museum of Childhood before their own promotions. And that was not me doing that. I found them like this. I just cultivated and together we capitalize on each other. And it cannot work when there isn't this kind of ethos in the museum, and it cannot work when there isn't commitment. So there were so many times I remember myself sitting in meetings and having this voice thinking, you have created this. It's your fault now that you're having these uncomfortable conversations. You could have been in your office making a decision and moving on. But that never stopped me because I thought, okay, I've made a commitment to live this way. I'm going to see it through, no matter how difficult or time-consuming it is. So what can that mean for members? If I can have the next slide, please. So for membership, and this is Anne-Marie Law with the brown top is our membership manager, and Vicky Jenner with the chest top is our digital producer and digital interpretation producer, and they have been working together on this new pilot project. And things that I think can work, and I got permission to use their photograph, but I think they have demonstrated to me since November and maybe before that they've been working on the project, that you have to have clarity and support, but also throughout you need to be confident but not arrogant, but confident in what you're doing and believing that what you do. You need to be decisive, and decisive is demonstrated even in small decisions. It doesn't always have to be, big decisions, but in the most small steps, be honest with what is going on, and be honest to yourself first, but also to your colleagues of the situation. Be humble, especially when it is a pilot and a new project. I don't say that in a negative way. Sometimes we make things up as we go along. We are experienced, we are informed, we've done our homework, but if it is a pilot and innovation, you don't know everything because it wouldn't have been a pilot. So have this humility, be open to ideas and suggestions, be optimistic that things will work out, because again, things do work out. Be resilient when obstacles will come your way, and be transparent. And the one thing that is a piece of advice that I was given in 2004 by the then director of the Natural History Museum in one of the inductions, I said, oh, what is the one quality that you want your employees to have? And Mike Dixon turned around and said, oh, he didn't know my name. I was on my first week. He said, to have fun. Because if you have fun, you're going to do it. You're more likely to do a good job. So if I can have the next slide. So that's it. Thank you. And we are ready for questions. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gina. Lessons for membership, lessons in leadership, all sorts of things came up in your talk. I'm really pleased that everybody got the chance to hear it.